Bismillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. يقول سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه قل إن الله يضل من يشاء ويهدي إليه من أناب الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات طوبى لهم وحسن مآب. صدق الله العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. اللهم أرنا حقيقة الأشياء كما هي. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. آمين يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the 27th ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd, and with all the ayats that have passed and all the ayats in the universe that these ayats have alluded to, this particular one quotes an attitude that the people of Mecca had at the time, an attitude that so many of us have from time to time as well. We want Allah to show us some sort of miracle. We want Allah to show us a miracle on demand. وَيَقُولُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, when the disbelievers will say, لَوْلَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْهِ آيَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ, why has there been no sign sent to him from his Rabb? Bear in mind that all the ayat that the Quran refers to as ayat, which are the phenomena of the heavens and the earth that human beings experience, everything that they experience within themselves, and then the ayat of the Quran being revealed repeatedly. Yet they're saying, we want an ayah. What do they understand by ayah? What they understand by ayah is a miracle. A miracle on their demands according to their standards. They're setting the standards and they're asking God to meet those standards. And on principle, the predominant stance of the Quran has been, and in Mecca remained, except for one or two exceptions, that no ayah is going to be given to you other than what is being revealed already, other than this Quran. You want miracles? Your demand is not coming from a place of love. It is not coming from a place of genuinely, sincerely wanting to know. It is coming from a place of arrogance. It is coming from a place of defiance. It is your addiction to your lifestyle of sin that does not allow for you to take the Quran seriously. It does not allow for you to see ayat in the Quran, ayat of the Quran, and the ayat that the Quran is talking about in the universe. They don't register in your mind as ayat. You take them for granted, as if you know everything about them, as if you were the creator of them, as if you control them, as if they're no big deal, as if they're just there, and there's nothing impressive about them. That all that is incredible, incredulous, inexplicable, ineffable within human experience, within the universe, it's just child's play for you, and you don't take that seriously enough and you want miracles to be given to you on demand. Again, something of an attitude that in our own religious journeys we may relate with when we have particular prayers, a particular dua that we're fixated upon that we want should be accepted as is. We want this prayer to be accepted as is. And if God does not accept my dua as I'm asking for it, then that God is not acceptable to me. Then I will be greatly upset. And again, as a natural reaction in the journey of a human being, you can see where that comes from. And there's a place for that. But if that's where we become fixated, if that's where we refuse to grow out of, there are so many needs that we have, there are so many desires that we have, there are so many hopes, aspirations, expectations that we have that do draw us closer to Allah. That if we come to the masjid, if we pray salah, if we do all of what we do in terms of ibadat, we have particular du'as in our mind, particular prayers that we want should be accepted, supplications. And to turn to Allah with those needs, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Allah acknowledges within the Quran that we get really desperate, we turn to Him alone, even if we're polytheists. But that is to be understood as a sign from within our own selves of how we recognize and understand Allah and relate with Allah. How there is within us that sincerity of iman, of tawheed, that we experience in those moments of desperation. That experience in the moment of desperation of our own tawheed is a sign that if we reflect on it, if we persist on it, then when that state of desperation is over, then it should lead for us to persevere in that same attitude of prayer. It is a need or a desperation that brings us to prayer, but then it is the experience of prayer and the relationship we develop with Allah that keeps us or should keep us, even if that desire has expired. That expectation is over. Whether that dua was fulfilled in the way we want it or not. All du'as are fulfilled, without a doubt. If we meet the prerequisites, if we bring sincerity and a halal self to that dua, du'as are accepted. Allah even accepts the du'as of those mushrikeen who in their desperation for life turn to Allah, asking Him to save them. Allah accepts their du'as. Du'as are accepted. But what we should be looking for is to be accepted ourselves. Are we acceptable to Allah? Our du'as are acceptable. Are we acceptable? Are our du'as developing, evolving, maturing? Are we changing? We want circumstances to change in our favor, fair enough. But do we change for Allah in the process of attaching ourselves to Him, praying to Him? قُلْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُضِلُّ مَن يَشَاءُ. Allah's response to this arrogant demand for miracles, say to them, Ya Rasulullah, that Allah misguides whoever He wants. This man yasha, whenever it comes in the Quran, a lot of times you will find that it can be read in both ways. And Mufassirin will say that it can be read in both ways. Allah guides whoever Allah wants should be guided. That's Allah's will. Allah guides whoever wants to be guided. If Allah sees sincerity there, if Allah sees effort there, then Allah guides, because Allah wants us to be guided to begin with. That's why He's revealing the Quran. It is hudal linnas. وَيَهْدِي إِلَيْهِ مَنْ أَنَابَ. So He misguides whoever wants to be misguided, and He guides to Himself whoever turns to Him, whoever makes that move, whoever takes that one step. Allah takes 10. Whoever comes walking, Allah comes running. Miracle or no miracles? God is not a God of miracles. That is the characteristic, defining feature, distinguishing feature of the way Allah is described in the Quran, as opposed to any other understanding of Him that you would find is popular in religions or spiritualities or what have you. That Allah does not want to be identified as the God of miracles. He identifies Himself in the Quran as the God of non-miracles as well. Of that which is mundane, of that which is routine, that which is every day, that which is every second. In your experience, He is the God of all of that. He is not asserting His presence because He did that which was mind-boggling, unfathomable, unexpected. Allah invites us to reflect so we understand that the reality that we live, the fact that we are, just the fact that we're alive, how incomprehensible is that? How unfathomable is that? How impossible is that? Just that we breathe, just that our heart beats, just that the sun rises and it sets and it comes again, and the cycle of day and night. Just because it happens routinely, you think there's nothing special about it. You reflect upon it, how mind-boggling it is. How the odds do not make sense. No measure of probability can come to estimate how it is that we are alive, we live, we talk, we converse, we have such ambitions, such aspirations. We have lives that are so complex, relationships that are so difficult. Don't you see the impossibility behind that? You want Him to demonstrate more impossibilities on top of this? وَيَهْدِي إِلَيْهِ مَنْ أَنَابَ. Those who see all of that turn to Him. Allah guides them to Himself. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Those who have believed. Those who have this attitude of Iman. Remember, there's 3 contrast classes of Iman within the Quran. Iman is contrasted with kufr, belief and disbelief. Kufr particularly understood as the act of hiding. And so in that context, what does it mean? You have an experience, some experience of Allah in your life, but to disbelieve is to hide that experience or hide Allah from that experience. Just like a farmer hides a seed. When a farmer is farming, he will sow the seed in the ground, the seed is no longer visible. That's the word, literally what kafir means. The act of sowing the seed, hiding the seed under the dirt. And that's what disbelief is as well. That there was something astonishing, something surprising, something incredible, something mind-boggling, reflection upon which was taking you to Allah. It was leading you to Him, but you hid it. You stopped that process. You hid that experience, or you hid Allah from that experience. You subtracted Him. The ayat of Quran were taking you somewhere. Your own du'as, your desperation was making you turn towards Allah. Your exasperations, your frustrations, you from within yourself felt that cry of Ya Allah come out. But as that situation was resolved, you forgot all about it. It was the doctors that saved my dad. Thank God we found that money. It all worked out fine. It all worked out fine. He's excluded from all explanations. That's the first contrast class of Iman. The other contrast class of Iman is nifaq, hypocrisy. That we've experienced Allah, we've acknowledged Him, we've attested to His being, His reality. But then we don't live it. what our own belief entails, the way we should live our lives, especially when it comes to giving and sacrificing, we're stingy, we hold back. We serve self before we serve Allah. We obey self, obey desires, obey others rather than Allah. And this attitude of thinking that what we're doing is the best, where it has taken away so much from the religion of Allah, from the struggle towards Allah. The characteristic feature of hypocrisy is the refusal to struggle. Laziness then becomes a habit of the hypocrite, which we see in a hadith as well, the Prophet ﷺ telling us Isha and Fajr being the most difficult prayers for the people of hypocrisy. The third contrast class of Iman, the less recognized one, the less spoken about, something that these ayat are alluding to specifically from Surah Al-Ra'd, is Iman as opposed to kibr. Iman as opposed to arrogance. That ayat of Allah demand an attitude of humility. Iman as humility. That when we experience the ayat of Allah, we experience them with an openness. That they are teaching me something. Something I did not know. Something I had forgotten. Something I did not see from this perspective. Something that I understood incorrectly. An area where I had a shortcoming in. A misunderstanding, a mistake, an ignorance, whatever. That this attitude of humility, when we bring that to the ayat of Allah, ayat in the Quran, ayat outside of the Quran, then this attitude of humility is such that it always teaches there is something new about Allah that we continue to learn. That we continue to experience Allah in new ways. كُلَّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. He is in a new splendor. He manifests, expresses himself, exhibits himself in a new splendor every day. And then when we're coming from a place of ignorance, there is so much of Allah that we still have to experience. And so the Iman brings that attitude of humility, that when a humble mu'min, a humble believer, with that attitude which recognizes, I don't know everything. I don't have all knowledge. I'm not infallible. I make mistakes. My understanding is limited. I need correction. I need rectification. I need repair. With that attitude, when I come to the ayat of Allah, then what lack of clarity does to me, what lack of knowledge does to me, it creates this angst inside me. It creates this frustration inside me. When I don't know, when I'm confused, when I'm in a state of doubt, then it manifests as knots in my chest. I feel constrained. And that's how the Quran represents it as well. Rabbi shrah li sadri. Open my chest for me. I feel a closeness in my chest. Alam nashrah laka sadrak. Did we not expand your chest for you? So there's a feeling of being constrained, tightened. But what the attitude of Iman does is that whenever you're experiencing that tightening because of not knowing or not understanding completely, and you bring that feeling with that humility to the ayat of Allah, what happens? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُهُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. The ones who believed, who have this attitude of Iman, this humility of Iman, their hearts find tranquility, itminan, in the dhikr of Allah. Remember where the ayat started off from. They're demanding ayat of Allah. Miracles on their description, on their standards. They're demanding from their arrogance. Allah is saying those who have the humility of Iman, where are their ayat? In the dhikr of Allah. In the remember, the Quran is az-dhikr, the remembrance of Allah. These people saying, we don't have itminan. We're not convinced. To convince us, to give us itminan, show us a miracle. The Quran is saying the people who genuinely have Iman, they don't ask for mountain to turn into a camel. They don't ask for the sea to split. They don't ask for none of that. They find in the dhikr of Allah their contentment, their itminan. Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. Unquestionably, it is only in the remembrance of Allah, in the dhikr of Allah, that hearts find tranquility. Now we look at these ayats and we remove them from the context that they've been revealed in, and we judge harshly every experience within ourselves and in others of whenever there is a lack of tranquility as a lack of Iman, as an insufficient attachment to the dhikr of Allah. Please understand, and this was in the very previous surah that we studied with respect to Yousaf alayhi salam, with respect to his father particularly, that his lack of itminan on account of his sons not being there, he didn't have sukoon. He was deeply sad and deeply grieved. Nevertheless, his hope with Allah was firm. Whenever the Quran asks us to not fear, to not grieve, it presupposes that we are in a state of fear, we are in a state of grief. That it is this cycle of being anxious and being upset, being saddened, that relating with the Quran will result in some level of tranquility. For us to find tranquility in the Quran, we have to experience a lack of tranquility. Just like Allah tells Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, by the glorious morning light and the night when it is still. For you to appreciate morning, you have to experience night. For you to experience tranquility, you have to experience confusion, perplexity, anxiety. That is the only situation where you will be able to appreciate the tranquility that you're getting. And it is not that as your state of Iman grows, as you grow closer and closer to Allah, that the state completely disappears. There are higher stations of tranquility, which means there are also higher stations of anxiety. There are higher stations of grief. And there will be higher experiences with the Quran. And yes, at times we do experience a degree of unrest within us, which our personal encounter or experience with the Quran, no matter how much we recite it or try to understand it, it doesn't go away. That is where وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ comes in. That is where the community comes in. That is where help comes in. We're not supposed to be lone warriors. The Muslim community is not a community of isolated individuals. It is a community of people who move together. When somebody is falling back or upset or saddened or anxious, they shouldn't feel the need to hide themselves away from the community, that they're going to judge me. They're going to see me as weak. They're going to look at me as faithless. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to be with them. But they should see themselves as safe in a group of people who will understand their pain. And whatever it is that they need for their itminan or their sukoon, there will be a facilitation for it. That is the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When he would experience in the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum any such problem, difficulty, he would look at where that difficulty is coming from. Does he need a shoulder to cry on? Does he need advice? Does he need money? Is he having problems in his marriage? Does he need help with that? All of those things would be brought into the conversation. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believed and performed righteously. Again, the focus on amal, the action that follows iman. طُوبَى لَهُمْ وَحُسْنُ مَآبٍ, there will be a delight for them and a beautiful place to return. كَذَلِكَ أَرْسَلْنَاكَ فِي أُمَّةٍ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهَا أُمَمٍ, thus have we sent you to a community before which other communities have passed on. So there were other nations before. لِتَتْسُلُوا عَلَيْهِمُ الَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ, so that you can recite to them what we have revealed to you. وَهُمْ يَكْفُرُونَ بِالرَّحْمَنِ, while they deny the most compassionate God. They believed in Allah. They believed in Khaliq. They even believed in Rabb. But what they had a deep difficulty with was Ar-Rahman. Because understand, polytheism, the reason why there are so many small g gods in polytheism, because the capital G God is inaccessible. The capital G God is so powerful, so mighty, so transcendent, so high, so distant, that he was distant. He couldn't care about what's going on earth. He couldn't be in any way concerned about what you and I are feeling, what you and I need. He was a necessity to believe in, because how else do you explain reality? But that he is as high and mighty and great and transcendent as he is, he would be concerned about what you do when you wake up, what you say before you sleep, whether you wash yourself after using the bathroom or not. Why would he care? Are we living? Are we dying? Are we in pain? Are we in ease? Do we know what to do? Do we not know what to do? What would he care? He's transcendent, beyond transcendent, beyond transcendent. So transcendent that he's inaccessible. Now, if that God is so inaccessible, what do? We have spiritual needs. Who's going to fulfill those spiritual needs? The small g gods, the idols. They'll be our intercessors before him. We're too lowly, we're too pathetic, we're too sinful to be in any way worthy of relating with him, talking to him talking to us, him responding to us. What does it mean for him to respond to us? That he heard us. That he heard us and he did something that otherwise would not have happened. Our dua changed something in reality. That level of personal involvement, That was absolutely unacceptable for the people of Quraysh. قَالُوا مَا الرَّحْمَنُ. They're like, who is this Rahman that he's talking about? We don't know no Rahman. This intense level of mercy associated with that God. قُلْ هُوَ رَبِّي. Say, Ya Rasulullah, He is my Rabb. My Rabb is Ar-Rahman. La ilaha illahu. There is no ilah except Him. There is no ma'bud except Him. There is no matloob except Him. There is no mahboob except Him. All of these meanings encompassed in the word ilah. Who is the ultimately desired, who is the ultimately trusted, who is the ultimately loved, who is the ultimately worshipped, who is the ultimately lived for, is Allah. He is incredibly merciful towards me. The least I can do is respond. He intensely loves me. The least I can do is love Him back. عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ. Upon Him I have relied, I have placed my trust. وَإِلَيْهِ مَتَابٌ. And to Him is my return. وَلَوْ أَنَّ قُرْآنًا. Had there been a Qur'an other than this, سُيِّرَتْ بِهِ الْجِبَالِ. One that would have made the mountains move. أَوْ قُطِّعَتْ بِهِ الْأَرْضِ. One that could split the earth. أَوْ كُلِّمَ بِهِ الْمَوْتَى. Or one that would make the dead rise up and speak. بَلْ لِلَّهِ الْأَمْرُ جَمِيعًا. But to Allah belongs the affair completely. What is implicit, what is not said, what is tacit in these ayats is, even then they would not believe. It is made explicit in other ayats of the Quran. Even if this Quran had done that, if it was that kind of a miracle that they're demanding, they would still not have believed, because their problem is not that there's not enough evidence, that there are not enough ayat, there's not enough willingness on their part. Because Allah has sent those miracles before as well. Did everyone believe? Not really. أَفَلَمْ يَيْأَسِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Have the believers not yet given up hope? Because understand, this predicament was becoming quite tense within Mecca. The Quraysh are demanding miracles. The Prophet is reciting ayat talking about the miracles of other prophets before him. Yet Allah refuses to give miracles. And so they're like waiting for some miracle to come. The believers want a miracle to come. Our team is losing. We need to score a victory. If Allah responds to their challenge, we'll have something to show for it. Allah says, no, I'm not doing it. I don't do that. I don't want to spoil them further. Have the believers not given up hope? Allah yasha'ullah, that if Allah wanted, لَهَدَى النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا, He could have guided the entirety of mankind. If that was the point to begin with, if He wanted to force people to commit to Iman, He could have just done that. He has the power to do that. But He has given people freedom to see who uses that freedom and comes towards Him. If He wanted to compel them, He would have just done that before. But He respects the freedom of human beings, even if that means holding Himself back. وَلَا يَزَالُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا تُصِيبُهُم بِمَا صَنَعُوا قَارِعَةٌ. Some disaster will continue to strike the disbelievers because of what they do. أَوْ تَحُلُّ قَرِيبًا مِّن دَارِهِمْ. Or it will crouch at their very doorsteps. This is them being threatened. They're asking for ayat. They might just get an adhab from Allah. And it is around the corner. The azab is around the corner. Their attitude is asking for it. حَتَّى يَأْتِيَ وَعْدُ اللَّهِ. Until the promise of Allah is fulfilled. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. And Allah will definitely not betray His promise. وَآخِرُ دَعْوَانَا أَنِ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. If there's any questions, comments, reflections, please do feel free. So for them, there is always a capital G God. So they believed in Allah. Allah, Khaliq, Rabb, these were beliefs that they carried with their polytheism. So even the Quran says, if you were to ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they will say Allah. So even that word was used, and Allah identified Himself with the same name as what they were familiar with. Rahman was alien to them. In their understanding, there was that capital G God, big God. And I think that's similar to what a lot of Hindus believe too. Yeah. So there will be Mahadev. So there's Devtas and then there's the Mahadev. So they also have the big God. Even if everything else is God, if there is pantheism, nevertheless there is a hierarchy among gods in which there is a greater God. Mahadev, Bhagwan. I'm not as familiar with Hindu theology, but from what I have from secondary sources, there is a hierarchy, and in that hierarchy there is an ultimate God. That's true for most polytheism. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's time. Today is early. Yeah, 8 to 7. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله